Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our seminar. My name is Talia Lai. Today's commercial seminar topic is commercial real estate auction. We are honored to have Mr. Julian Curry of 10X as our keynote speaker. My co-host, Samson Wu, is going to introduce the speaker and topic. He is also going to moderate the Q&A section. Thanks also for Dennis Nee of CoStar for generously sponsoring our lunch. Samson, please take it away.
Thank you, Talia. So we're pleased to have our commercial real estate auction speaker, Julian at the West San Gabriel Valley Realtors. So Julian served as a sales executive and is responsible for developing working relationship with brokers and owners of commercial real estate assets in Los Angeles. His mission is to empower his client to leverage 10X platform with the CoStar and LoopNet brands and grow 10X market presence and CRE transaction value in Los Angeles by bringing a global market of buyers to every sales transaction. Julian, please take it.
Good morning, everyone joining us here live and online. It is a pleasure to be invited and speaking with you today in regards to commercial real estate auctions, our platform 10X, and the entire CoStar group of families. I definitely want to thank Cecilia. I wanted to thank the West San Gabriel Valley Association of Realtors for having me today. Thank you to Ann Cho, who has made the introduction, and Dennis Lee, my CoStar colleague, who is here supporting today. So again, just a little bit about myself and my background. I think it's relevant to this conversation regarding auctions and real estate. My background is as a commercial real estate agent and broker. I am licensed for over a decade here in Los Angeles. And again, I've only focused on and worked on commercial real estate transactions from the entirety of my career. The reason that's important for me is because as a broker, and as an agent, even in the residential space right now, it's gotten tougher and tougher to transact deals in this particular market environment. And what I found was 10X was a very, very valuable tool in terms of auctions and an auction option for dispositions for sellers in this current market. Of note, and I think worth mentioning, if you're not familiar at all, let me help you understand just how small the auction environment right now online is for commercial real estate transactions. You'll notice here, and this comes from a recent Globe Street article, you'll notice that online auctions handle about 1% of all commercial real estate transactions and sales, right? So we're talking about a very, very small, at this particular present point, adapted creative tool that sellers and brokers are utilizing in this market and in this space. And if you go further, you can see here our CEO, Steve Jacobs, was quoted in this article as saying that the auction sector is poised for mainstream adoption, particularly within this current economy, where speed and certainty are paramount to getting deals closed. So when you look at that 1% of deals that are trading right now, again, specifically at online auctions, I can tell you from my experience, that number is definitely trending upward, and trending upward quickly as we are in the middle of this market. Sellers are really looking for ways to be more creative and trying to figure out how they can facilitate a more fast and certain sale on their assets. Brokers and agents are being challenged and tasked with the same sort of problem. And so everybody is now starting to get more familiar with the auction process and how it can benefit them as it relates to commercial real estate sales or real estate sales in general. What you'll also notice and recognize here is that auctions have become a very regular occurrence in each and every one of our lives, right? I would imagine if we ask anybody, has anybody frequented any of these sites here or been to any one of these locations or participated in an auction, maybe on eBay or at NASDAQ by show of hands? All right, Meekums, I watch a lot of auto auctions on Meekums, right? All of these are well-known auction platforms. And the main reason that we see most individuals going to these platforms, whether it's online or in person, right, to conduct their businesses, these main points you're seeing over here. One, it's transparency. Whenever you're participating in an auction, because you have so much activity that's going on in a short period of time, you have to have the opportunities and the deals whether it's a pair of socks or whether it's $1 million real estate asset, you have to have all the information about that asset or that deal available to the bidder community whenever you're operating in online auctions. Speed and efficiency, Steve just mentioned this, again, our CEO on the previous slide. Right now in this market, and in markets in general, right, buyers and sellers are looking for fast transactions, and ultimately they want to have certainty of close whenever they commit themselves to a particular asset or transaction. They like the fact that there's no negotiations, detailed due diligence we spoke about before, buyers getting very quick looks, in a fair marketplace. So these are all reasons that individuals, both buyers and sellers, are becoming more and more familiar and entrenched in operating in auction environments. So as agents and brokers, the way I would like for you to leave this conversation today, as we talk about 10X and as we talk about the auction environment in general for real estate, I want you to leave empowered with an understanding of, if I come across a listing that's a commercial real estate listing, I can service that listing at the highest ability, ability, right, by partnering with 10X, CoStar, and LoopNet, right, to achieve the highest price in the shortest amount of time for my seller. That's the whole goal of this conversation. So with that in mind, here's some information that's specific to the 10X platform. What you'll understand is that our entire platform was put together with those two ideas in mind, helping deals get closed faster and with more certainty. 10X has actually been around since 2008 as an organization, right? We are formerly auction.com. So any, residential brokers in here who are familiar with that platform, that's formerly our company. We've spun off in 2009 and started our focusing on specifically commercial real estate transactions. So the first thing you want to understand is 10X is a platform for CRE deals, commercial real estate deals. Anything that's 5 units and up on the residential end, and then any land that has a commercial use, and obviously all of the commercial asset types in between, industrial, retail, right, office, no matter what it is, we've handled it on our platform. We've done, by the way, upwards of 10,000 transactions on our platform, right around $31 billion of sales. And it's all now harnessed completely across the CoStar, LoopNet, and 10X ecosystem. In 2020, CoStar came in and acquired our company, right? Most of you, or many of you, might have started to see a little bit of that news and started to kind of recognize the logo that is very similar to now CoStar logo. So when they acquired our company, CoStar that is, it did a couple of things for the 10X platform as an auction platform. One, it gave us extreme visibility and access to data and analytics now that we can provide you as brokers and agents to help you underwrite your deals, right? Evaluate what are good deals and kind of help your sellers understand what good pricing is. Two, we're connected to LoopNet, right? And between both platforms, CoStar and LoopNet, and then you add on 10X, now you've got the highest level of visibility across the largest ecosystem of commercial real estate buyers and sellers who are online looking to transact. So this represents, CoStar, LoopNet, and 10X represent about 12 million monthly subscribers that we see that traffic throughout those three platforms, those three sites. And by and large, many of the assets that we bring onto 10X, right, are getting visibility, or most of the assets we're bringing on 10X are getting visibility across LoopNet and CoStar, again, at the highest level with the free Diamond Status LoopNet ad that we're going to gift to your listing as it comes on board. I'll talk a little bit more about how you can take advantage of that, but do understand, by partnering your commercial real estate listing with 10X, you are going to get the highest visibility in the market at no additional cost to you or to your seller from a marketing or advertising standpoint. As we go through this conversation, here's what I like to call are the Cliff Notes version of what makes a good opportunity to fit on 10X. If you're working on a deal, you're talking to a seller, and you're thinking to yourself, hey, is this a good opportunity for 10X? These are the 4 kind of points that you want to kind of keep in mind as you're having that conversation or that thought. It's 1, our speed. So our entire process is list to close in under 100 days. That includes our 2-day standard auction that we host and our 30-day standard escrow that we utilize with all of our transactions. So less than 4 months, you've got a property on the platform and close with commission in your pocket, sellers off doing whatever they need to do, 1031 or whatever the case may be. Beyond that, our reach. I just spoke about the fact that we've got visibility on CoStar, LoopNet, and 10X, 12 million monthly subscribers. When you think about 10X as a marketing partner, because really that's what we are, we're a broker marketing tool and transaction tool. When you think about us in that way, what you really want to understand is that 10X is really like a turbo-powered engine, right? What happens is you are the local market expert from a marketing standpoint, so you know the regional and local players who would be interested in the asset. But 10X, what we do is we come alongside you, we support your marketing, we have other layers of marketing that we roll out on our own that allow you to get your asset in front of a national and even international buyer pool. And then we drive those buyers to you to give you calls so that you don't necessarily have to worry about how do I find the buyer for my deal in LA that might be based in Florida, right? 10X is a great partner to be able to bring that prospect to you and allow you to reach out to them, have the contact information to be able to prospect efficiently. Next, it's control. And this speaks to our reach. The fact that we widen, right, your efforts from a more local and regional effort to a national and international effort does not mean that we step into the driver's seat and take control of your listing. You are still the broker on your deal. You are still the main point of contact as it relates to communicating the deal points with any and all buyers that would come to the table. And we actually give you access and visibility to everything that's going on with your listing and how it's tracking, what's being done with marketing through our back-end dashboard, where you will give you a login, we'll give the seller a login, and you guys can communicate and correspond about how 10X is marketing the asset, what it looks and feels like, and you're in complete control of that. And then last but not least, and this is the big piece, we've mentioned it a couple of times up until this point, it's the certainty of close, right? We all know right now with interest rates creeping up as they continue to do, I hope we've seen the last of that, but it seems like there might be one more increase coming up here. But just the fact that we've got a lot of uncertainty in our market, again, dealing with rates, dealing with inflation, dealing with crime, right? All of these things that are going on. You got a lot of deals that are falling out of escrow. Buyers are committing on deals and they get into escrow and all of a sudden they fall out and they don't want to move forward for whatever bad news has come today, right? On 10X, you take advantage of as is, where is, non-contingent, non-negotiable trades. Every deal on our platform has those elements to it. We utilize a non-negotiable, non-contingent PSA on all of our transactions, right? And we have a 96% closing rate on all of the deals that trade in our auctions and then go on to escrow to close. And that's because of the way we orchestrate our due diligence and deliver that to the buyer from a transparency standpoint. And then also the way that we utilize, again, our auction process to make sure that we're getting the buyer who's willing to commit to that non-negotiable, non-contingent PSA. I'll share this with the association, so everybody will get a copy of this deck. You don't have to worry about trying to remember everything that's included in here. Just get the high level points and then feel comfortable reaching back out here to me. So when you look at 10X, right, and you're talking about 10X to a client, one of the main things they're going to ask you is, how is this better than what we're doing already traditionally, Dennis, for instance, right? We already have the property online on LoopNet. How is this going to, give us any advantage or any edge? Well, I'll tell you what, one of the first things I like to point out is right here, the fact that it's no additional cost to you or to the seller, right? At the end of the day, when you bring a deal onto 10X, and we have a process that we go to make sure that that deal is actually a fit for our platform, when we're underwriting on the front end to make sure we're in alignment with the seller's pricing expectations. But once we have that understanding on pricing and we commit to bringing the deal onto our platform, the way we're going to align with you, or one of the main ways we align with you on that listing, is giving you that free diamond status LoopNet ad at additional no cost to you or your client. Now, here in California, in the LA market, that's going to be somewhere between $15,000 to $25,000, right? Is what it would cost you usually to get that. And now, if you know the tiers of marketing in terms of LoopNet, it goes basic, silver, gold, platinum, then diamond, right? So diamond is the highest level you get. If you're on basic level right now, you're essentially getting visibility on CoStar and not LoopNet. Once you increase from basic to diamond, you're getting 1,100 times more visibility on your asset, right? And again, that's nationwide. And furthermore, on 10X, our database has about 700,000 buyers, right, that are signed up legitimately on the 10X database. All of those buyers are bought to the party and are engaged on your asset as well. Another key piece for 10X is our trade rate, right? About 58% at the beginning of this year was our trade rate, as we looked at deals that came onto the platform, actually hit pricing expectations from the seller and then went in auction. As of about these last, call it this last quarter or so, we're right around 50%, right? With all the uncertainty in the market, we're still able to achieve 5 out of 10 deals coming onto our platform, hitting those pricing expectations, and then moving on to close in our escrow. We spoke about, our process being very quick, having a global reach, and our 30-day close. But these are the components combined that you're going to be able to tell your client, hey, listen, all of these come with 10X. This is the standard package for working with 10X. It's really tough to put all of these pieces together in the traditional process, right? It's really tough to not have you or your seller pay for any marketing and still get the highest level of visibility and get a number of buyers to the table who are interested in bidding on your asset or placing an offer on your asset. That's the value of leveraging the 10X platform. And, across the board, if you're working with, clients who are institutional, if you're working with clients that are banks, and this is a great sector right now to be focused on as an agent or a broker, a lot of lenders are feeling a lot of pain. They're having conversations right now with a lot of owners about restructuring debt, early conversations about whether or not to take assets back, servicing. We cut our teeth. We really built our business on working with all of the types of clients that you see here, right? Obviously, now the majority of our business is done with private clients, right? So a lot of, individuals who just might be, private individuals who are in the business. But if you have retail assets that you're working on and it's got a Kroger who's listed in there or a CVS who's listed in there, we've sold properties directly for those organizations, and we sell properties on a regular basis that have those individuals as tenants, right? And so feel comfortable being able to tell your client, even if we've got a high profile or a high class asset, it fits on the 10X platform. And I'll give you guys some examples of assets that have actually traded on our platform recently, so you can share that as well. Another interesting point about 10X, this is something that really made me confident about working with the platform or coming on to be an account executive when I was recruited out of my own brokerage. And it's the fact that 10X requires a broker on each one of the deals that we bring on board, right? So right now in our market, and this is especially relevant now, I'm getting a lot of phone calls from sellers direct who are in the market, who are a little bit afraid and trying to figure out what can I do to get this property sold before this market continues to slide deeper, right? And when they reach out to me, I tell them, of course, we can be a resource for you. But then I also ask them, who's your broker? Who are you working with, right? Because at the end of the day, 10X is a platform that's going to elevate the marketing and the transaction process, but we are not going to replace all of the hard work that goes in with communicating with the buyer, right? Negotiating, or I shouldn't say negotiating the PSA, but ushering them into understanding the purchase and sale agreement, right? All of those communications are still going to be orchestrated by you as the broker. And as you can see here, right, we obviously work with many of the top firms that are in the country, across the country, nationwide. But I would just call to your attention these two groups here, Paramount Lodging Partners and Transwestern. These are two firms who are by design just smaller boutique firms, but they continuously leverage our platform, understand how to use our process, and actually take us into their client pitches with them as they're going to pitch commercial real estate business. And they'll talk to their clients about how they can service their account the traditional way, but then also how they can present their offering through the 10X platform and drive additional buyers to the platform. By the way, for each one of the brokers that we work with and each one of the assets, I should say, that we bring onto the platform, 10X historically has given our brokers on average anywhere from 120 to 150 new leads per asset that we bring on board. And those assets go with you. They don't stay locked inside of a 10X account. They're accessible by you. You can download them, bring them into your own database, prospect them for more business. So again, that's on average 120 to 150 clients that we're going to bring to your doorstep who are interested in the asset that you're marketing, right? And then another piece of that, I would say, is that, again, Paramount Lodging Partners, hotel brand and group. If you do any business with or have any contacts that are in the hotel business, 10X is a well-known platform for trading hotel assets in that community and in space. So I would say feel free to have those conversations very confidently. And then also for us, retail. Specifically, I would say multi-tenant retail is the highest traded asset class on 10X if you just look at the sheer number of deals that we've sold on our platform. So keep those two asset classes in mind, right? If you haven't sold a hotel before, that's fine. But now you have a resource and a team behind you that will empower you to be able to go out and pitch that client on why it might be best to go with you and use 10X. Same thing for retail as well. Important for 10X, how do we make our money, right? Because we're not charging you, we're not charging your broker, we're not charging you or your seller, but we are making money, somehow, right? We have to be profitable as a business. And the way that we do that is we have a buyer premium fee schedule, right? So essentially it's a buyer paid fee for the winning bidder in auction on 10X. across our 2-day online auction. When that wraps up, whoever that eventual winning bidder is will pay a corresponding fee to the deal size that they purchase. And here's a little more blown up version of that. Again, you'll have this when I send out the email, but you can see it's capped at 5%, all the way down on a sliding scale to 0.5%. So the larger the deal size that you're working on, that your seller is working on, the smaller the fee that's going to come over to 10X. And then furthermore, I would add that this schedule is listed on each one of our assets. So right at the top of this picture here, you'll see there's a link where you click right on that link. It'll pop open this box for you. And if you're a bidder looking at an asset on 10X, you can go down and say, okay, listen, if I place my bid at X amount, here's the fee that I'm going to place, and we'll actually calculate it for the buyer right here online. Again, so transparency, right? Buyers are showing up, they're getting all the due diligence. They want all the information, including if I win the auction, how much is it going to cost me total, right? And so all of that is available right there for that seller, for that broker. And again, one of the first things that CoStar said when they came in and acquired our company in 2020 was that, hey, look, we need to make sure that this fee schedule is very competitive and keeps buyers coming to the table. For instance, before CoStar acquired our company, this schedule used to just be at 5% across the board. So before, it didn't matter what the deal size was. If it was a $50 million deal, it was a 5% fee to 10X. If it was a $1 million deal, same thing, 5%. So CoStar has came in and we've tweaked that over the course of the last 3 years. And I can attest to the fact that this fee schedule you see here has continued to help those buyers show up, click the button, and be engaged in our auction. And on average, right, we're achieving about 10% above the seller's requested reserve on our platform. All right, so if a seller wants $1 million for an asset, they come to 10X, they set the reserve at $1 million. On average, we're getting that seller $1,100,000 for their asset. Right, so they're overachieving on the platform. Now, I'll park here and then I'll pause and check in for any questions that we might have. But this is right here is really the engine under the hood for 10X. This is our complete process. This is how we achieve that 96% closing rate. This is how we get you those 120 to 150 buyers who are coming to the table from across the country, right? I'll take you through this and then again, just take a quick pause. So what happens is way out here what happens is we have an opportunity to connect, and that the we is myself as the account executive over at 10X working in the Los Angeles region, and you and your seller, right, as the deal team on your side looking to sell that asset. You'll reach out to me and you'll say, hey, listen, Julian, I think I have this deal or this seller that would be a good fit for 10X. Here are the reasons why, right? And here's the asset. So we'll have a quick conversation and get an understanding about why you think the deal is a fit. Again, why you think the seller might be a fit. And then ultimately what I'll do is I'll take that information, and the chief piece of information that I'm going to look for to get from you and from your seller is ultimately, what is the bottom line price that the seller is asking for, right? It all comes down to money in our business, right? What is the bottom line value that the seller is looking to get? As is, where is 30-day close with vetted buyers showing up to compete? What's the bottom line? Once you give me that number, I'll take that number. Hopefully it's informed by the comps, right? Your underwriting, pro formas, things of that nature. And so I'll take that number in the underwriting and everything that you've given me, and I'll deliver it to our internal underwriting team. All they do all day is sit down and underwrite deals across the country, right? All shapes and sizes of asset classes. And they will come back to us and they will give us a low and a high guidance range on where they fit, on where we feel we can set the reserve at and make an engaged pool of buyers at auction, right? Multiple buyers at auction. The beauty of our platform at 10X is not just to find you the one buyer who's going to pay your seller's price. We do that all the time. The beauty of 10X is that we're going to find you 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 buyers who are going to all show up across that 2-day auction, click the button and drive the value up. But in order to be able to do that, we have to make sure that we are aligned with you and the seller on what you think is a fair price for the property. Because if we don't, then we'll get into auction and we'll have buyers who are clicking the button. We won't get near your seller's price. Buyers will check out and we'll have a stalled auction and nobody's happy, right? So we'll take that opportunity to get on the same page with you right out of the start. Once the seller in 10X and yourself are in agreement on a reserve price, and by the way, that reserve price is undisclosed. So nobody in the market, no buyers, nobody else knows that number except for you as the broker, your seller, and then 10X. Everybody else in the outside buyer community will see the property listed as price undisclosed or price withheld, right? So it would feel sort of similar to a call for offers that we're doing, right? So we'll establish that number. We'll give you the guidance range on where we can set the reserve to get multiple buyers. Once we get once the seller says, yes, I want to get it done, then we'll have the seller execute a simple marketing agreement for 10X. It's 2 pages, and it will list you in the marketing agreement as their broker, as their fiduciary. And 10X is not a party to any commission agreement that you have or any listing agreement. So we don't need to be written into that at all. You lock down your agreement with the seller. We'll get it set up with 10X so that it lists you in there again as their broker on the deal. Once we get it signed up, then we'll move into what you see here, the 10-day onboarding process. So this is where we take the traditional process and we flip it right on its head, right? So rather than finding a buyer, negotiating, getting into escrow, and then hoping that everything just works out and that we can cross our fingers and we don't have to give a haircut on price, we're going to take an opportunity to get all of the available due diligence for the asset up front. So any rent rolls, any P&Ls, any agreements for the property, we're going to gather that up front. We're also going to go a step beyond. 10X on each asset will order a phase 1 environmental report, and we will order a property condition assessment report, both on our own dime. So 10X will pay for those reports up front. And we want to put those in the data room along with title and our PSA that we'll use, non-contingent PSA. We'll draft a copy of that and put it in the data room as well. And we want to make sure all of that is available for buyers to see before we start marketing the asset. That way, when we get off to the races and the buyers are coming to the table, we can alleviate all concerns and answer any question that they may have about the asset, right? So we'll do that. We'll pay for those 2 pieces of due diligence. As the property moves through this process, after auction, and then once it closes, those will be the only 2 fees that the seller ever has to pay 10X for. It's the phase 1 environmental report and the property condition assessment report. Both of those cost about $2,000 a piece with our preferred vendors, so about $4,000 total, only at closing when the deal trades. If the deal, for some reason, does not trade in auction and it never closes, then 10X will eat that cost. We'll just absorb that cost. You and the seller never have to pay for that. Okay? Is that clear? Okay? So we'll order those documents. We'll put them in the data room. We'll also take an opportunity to get marketing for the asset. So 10X will send out its own CoStar photographer. We'll get our own pictures of the asset. We'll get drone footage of the asset. We'll get Matterport and virtual tours set up of the asset. This is all on our own dime. Again, a part of that diamond package is about $15,000 to $25,000. You don't have to pay for that at all, right? And then once we get it built out on 10X, we have the photos up looking great. We have all the verbiage and the highlights reading how you want it to read. The due diligence is tight. Then we will ask you, hey, listen, seller, are you good to go live? Seller will say, yes, let's go live. And then we have a minimum marketing period of 40 days to about 45 days where we take the property out at the highest level. This is when we're now live with that diamond status ad on LoopNet, CoStar, and 10X, right? So you have 45 days of visibility on that at the highest level. On average, we're seeing about 10,000 views that are coming to our web pages on 10X alone per asset. I had an asset in auction back in July of this year that got over 1 million views across the total web online. We had about 30 bids that came in throughout the course of the auction. So imagine having a listing you're working on, and in a matter of 48 hours, you get 30 bids and 30 offers that come in, right? That's the power of leveraging the platform and putting those buyers into one competitive environment on one day. So leading up to the auction, we'll have 45 days of that marketing. It's not just only on 10X, CoStar, and LoopNet. We have our own email database that goes out again to that 700,000 of buyers that's direct to 10X. We have third-party emails that we'll send out to. We run social media campaigns, right? Featured, article releases in our own trade publication that's called Bid Magazine. So all of this is layered for your property over the course of these weeks leading up to the auction. And we take an opportunity to meet with you and the seller once a week, about 10 or 15 minutes, to help you understand what layers of marketing have went out, how that's impacted the buyers and how they've reacted to it, and then ultimately what kind of guidance they've given us about pricing. So as we run this for 45 days, it takes us to our 2-day online auction. All of our auctions are 2 days. They start on either a Monday or Tuesday, and then they wrap up on a Wednesday or a Thursday, and they happen every other week, right? So what will happen is on the second half of the second day, that's where we usually see most of the bidding activity. We'll set up a Zoom call with you, the seller, and our 10X team, and we'll watch the last 20 minutes of the auction. If you wanna get your blood pressure going and get your blood rate going, I suggest you hop in and watch an auction and participate. It's a really active event, right? There's a lot of moving parts and pieces, and it's really why you're valuable, to be quite honest with you, as we move through the process. Because once we get into that auction, all the seller is looking at are the numbers that are coming in. They forget about the market. They forget what a good deal looks like. And that's your role in the auction, to help them understand, hey, this deal is such and such cap rate. It's a great buyer. They've got a good, they've had good conversation over the course of our marketing period. This is a good buyer and a good deal, seller, right? So that's your role within the auction. You're advising them real time. Now, once that high bidder comes in, hits the reserve, if the bidders don't hit, if bidding doesn't hit the reserve in auction, remember we set that number at the beginning of the process. If bidding does not get to that number, the property does not trade. The seller does not have to trade the asset, right? So that's their safety net in the auction. But once the bidding gets to that number, again, rises above that number is our goal, then we also have 2 checks and balances that are in place within this auction that are going to give us some comfort in being able to close the deal in escrow. The first one is that within 2 hours of the winning bidder winning that auction, we send them a purchase and sale agreement from 10X, right? That's non-negotiable, non-contingent, and they have to execute that and sign that within 2 hours. And then within 24 hours of signing the purchase and sale agreement, we require the buyer to send in earnest money deposit in the amount of 10% to escrow, non-refundable. So when you open up your 30-day escrow after using the 10X auction process, you will have a buyer that is non-contingent, non-negotiable, and they've already submitted hard EMD, hard deposit to escrow, right? So that's how we achieve that 96% closing rate as we move through this process and give our sellers certainty that we're going to be able to close after a very anxious auction process. I'll pause there for a minute. I know I said a lot and threw a lot. Do we have any questions that are coming in the chat? Good to go there? Any questions about the auction process specifically? Yes, sir, in the back. No. So 10X is not a fiduciary in any capacity. Absolutely. I'm sorry. The question was, does 10X represent the buyers on transactions? And the answer again is no. So again, 10X is not a fiduciary. We are not an agent, right, for sellers or brokers on our platform. Now, on our platform, I would say about, I'm trying to see if I can give you, on the top of this page here, right next to where you'll click for the link, I'll give you a more blown up visual. There's also a link for brokers to register their clients to participate on 10X. So buyers can have a broker that represents them on the platform. We probably see about, from my experience, about 40% of the buyers who are repped by a broker signing up to win a deal on 10X. So that means about 60% of the time, more time than not, you're dealing directly with that particular seller, or excuse me, that particular buyer who wants to purchase the property. Now, just really quickly, buyers, there's a link on the page. Buyers can, or buyer broker can register their particular buyer. Buyer can register themselves for the auction. And then we still use a traditional PSA, right, that will list in the purchase and sale agreement after the winning buyer wins who that buyer is, what their name is, who their broker is. So all of that information will get gathered and collected traditionally, and then we'll deliver it all to escrow. And escrow will be a pretty traditional process. That means that you're representing them, right? So the question was, what happens if a buyer is on 10X, they win the deal and they're not represented, correct? They're unrepresented, right? So in that instance, then, if you have the ability to represent both sides of the equation, then you would be able to represent both sides. If the seller says, hey, or excuse me, the buyer says, hey, I want to represent myself, I don't need a broker, then they have that ability as well. In either case, whatever commission you've negotiated will just be the commission that you earn. You don't have to split that with anybody. Any more questions? Thank you, Dennis, for reminding me.
Hey, Julian, I have another question. So what happens if the buyer, they won the auction and if they don't, the buyer doesn't perform? Is that penalty on it?
Absolutely, great question. So there's 2 layers to that. So if the buyer does not perform once we've gotten into escrow, say they've submitted earnest money deposit, they've opened the escrow, for some reason they just don't perform, they walk away, they've defaulted by no fault of the seller. Let's be clear about that, right? This is a buyer default, not a seller default. In that event, the 10% earnest money deposit that we collect is liquidated damages for the seller. So the seller will receive that 10% earnest money deposit. Now, let's just be honest, right? After we win this 2-day, or after the buyer wins this 2-day online auction, there's a small hole and a small gap of where we have to collect that purchase and sale agreement, and we have to collect that earnest money deposit. If the buyer defaults in that window, just after the auction and before we open escrow, there hasn't been any deposit that's been gained, so we don't have any remedy in that regard, right? We've just lost that buyer. They move on. Now, what we are able to do is we are able to reload the asset, take it back to auction, all complete marketing. We can streamline it. We don't have to make it wait so long, right? So we can take it right back to a quicker auction. Or what we traditionally do, which is our top options, is on every asset, whoever the winning buyer is, we typically send out a backup contract to whoever that second and third buyer are, right? Because we know that there's that chance that that one buyer might not perform, but there are 2 or 3 other buyers behind them that have already placed a bid. So when we're sending out that contract to the first buyer, we're telling them, hey, congratulations, you've won. We're excited for you. Please sign the contract in 2 hours. You have earnest money deposit that needs to come in 24 hours. And then we immediately pivot from that conversation and we go to the backup buyers and we let them know, hey, listen, we appreciate you participating. We were unfortunate that you were not able to win the deal today, right? But here is a backup contract. You can execute this and be in position in the event that the primary winning buyer does not perform.
That's great.
Thank you.
Do we have any more questions? Thank you so much, Julian.
Do we have any more time? Are we wrapping up now? Do we have 2 minutes? Oh. Okay. All right. I wanted to make sure I'm trying to so here's my favorite part of this conversation, right? I've talked at you a lot. I've given you a lot of information. Let me show you, actually what the platform looks like and what it can do. Has anybody been, let me ask this, has anybody been on to Tenex.com? My good friend Dennis here. Is anybody, I love it. Has anybody else been on the Tenex? My good friend Ann. All right, we got it. Okay, so listen, if you have not been on the Tenex, very simply, I would encourage you to do so. It's free, again, and it really can give you a wealth of knowledge. So a lot of times when people think about auctions, they think about, distressed assets, vacant assets, assets that don't look that well or in bad locations. And you know what? We see some of those assets on our platform, but if you just scroll through and look at these buildings, I mean, these are quality assets, Class A office investment, Courtyard Marriott, right? Here's a 100% occupied triple net lease industrial opportunity. So here's another 95% occupied retail center with upside. So when you start talking to your clients and you mention the idea of Tenex or an auction, I want you to be ready and prepared for them to tell you, hey, my property is not a bad property. Like, my property is not distressed. Why do I need to go to auction? And I want you to be prepared and ready to tell them, listen, seller, I get it. It's not a bad property. It's a great property, which is why I think it's a good fit to go on Tenex, because Tenex is not selling properties that are bad properties. They're selling stabilized apartment units. They've got 176 affordable units occupied with income, right? So you can tell them that, hey, there's Class A assets that are going on to the platform. And now once they come on, here's a perspective and a view that the buyers would see. So remember we talked about before, you had the great question in the back about, hey, what if a buyer comes and they have a broker that's represented them, right? If that's the case, what's going to happen is the buyer, that broker is going to come here and they're going to click this button that says register for co-op here. And it's going to open up an opportunity for that buyer's broker to register themselves as a participating broker on the Tenex auction, right? So we capture their information for you there. And then another piece of it, another way that we go ahead and we capture information, as you can see, we have all of these buttons that are down here at the bottom. This one will actually allow bettors to register for the auction. Once they click that button, right, it's also going to ask them, and it won't allow me to do it right now. It's asking me to review the due diligence. So before I can even access the auction and sign up, it makes you go down and access each one of the due diligence pieces that are available here in the data room with this blue button, right? And it's going to make sure that all the buyers are seeing the due diligence information, that they're informed when they show up at the auction, so that when they click the button, right, and they're the winning bidder, they can't come to you and say, hey, I haven't seen the profit and loss statement, or I haven't seen the rent roll, or I didn't know that about the lease. You can say, yes, you did, because you have to see all that information before you actually show up at the auction, right? So this is a buyer's view. On this actual auction day, you can see the auction starts next week on the 16th. It has a ticker here that'll count down for you. It shows you the starting bid. One thing to recognize here, the starting bid is not the reserve. So remember, we talked about before setting the reserve with the seller, doing that evaluation on the front end to see what their bottom line is and make sure we agree with it on 10X. So that is not the starting bid that we set. The starting bid that we set is a number that is set artificially low, right? We set it low and intentionally on low on purpose so that we can get buyers excited about the idea of the opportunity and get them to show up at the auction and click the button wherever they feel comfortable, right? So this is the only pricing on the market that buyers will see for your asset. And again, it's not what the seller's asking. It's just to get them into the door and to get them looking at the asset and clicking the asset. Now, for you and your seller, this is what you will see when you come onto 10X. This is the view that you will get. This is called our marketing center. So if you're ever on LoopNet or CoStar on the back end, this should look and feel very similar to that. And what you'll get is you'll get insight and information into your asset, right? The auction date, obviously, but then some more important information about how the deal is tracking. Again, averaging around 10,000 page views per asset. This is right on track. You can see here, 235 signed confidentiality agreements on this asset. Remember, I told you before, we average somewhere between 120 to 150. So this asset is obviously getting phenomenal traction, right? We've got 13 buyers who are approved to bid on this asset. That means when we go to auction, there are 13 people who have submitted to us verifiable liquid proof of funds that say, hey, look, I have the financial ability to buy this deal, right? And for you and your seller, you get all of this information that will show you how the deal is tracking, right? And this is all great reporting information if your seller is asking you about on a Friday, right? What has went out on the asset this week and how's it tracked with buyers, or where's the asset at online? You can tell them, hey, it's on Yahoo, it's on AOL, it's on ESPN, it's on Washington Post. These are all legitimate venues that we will post assets to, depending upon what kind of asset you have and where it's located. So we don't just shotgun it to the market, right? We want to make sure it's specific to the buyers who are going to be looking at your asset. So this is different for each asset that comes on 10X. And then one of the more powerful reporting tools is this map that we have here. This will show you nationally and even internationally where buyers are coming from and clicking on your asset, right? We track IP addresses for each individual computer that is clicking onto your asset and finding out information about it. We capture that information and we help you, understand again where that traction is coming from. And then the last piece of information that I'll share with you here, this is where the gold is at for all my brokers and my agents out there. This is our 10X leads list, right? So again, that 235, 240 signed confidentiality agreements, they all filter into this back end list, right? This is downloadable. Again, you can click on it, bring it into your own system, and you get powerful information on everybody who's looking at your asset, their email, their phone, right? You can leave notes in here about what they're thinking about the asset. And then ultimately, once you click their profile, it'll open up for you and let you know, hey, listen, what have they done on 10X? How much proof of funds have they submitted, right? And then give you an idea if they've been active on the platform at any point in time. Looks like this is a new person to our platform, Raj Raina, but they've submitted already upwards of $3 million of proof of funds on our platform. Again, these are verifiable liquid. They have to submit them to us on each deal and each asset. So if you're working on this deal, you might say, hey, look, I want to give Raj a call and see, what his story is. Does he have more money that he can put in on this deal? Is he gonna be able to bid up to $5 million on my deal? Whatever the case may be. But the whole idea is to make your prospecting more efficient. Last but not least, just to give you an idea of the assets that have traded on our platform. Here's a deal that traded in July, residential development site. So again, if you're working on deals that are redevelopment deals, that are land deals, as long as it has a legitimate commercial use, we could service it on our platform. This deal sold at $2.5 million, 3% above where the seller's requested reserve was at. 77 days list to close, 7 bids that came in on this asset. Here's another one that traded. This was a car wash, a newly developed car wash that traded at $7.1 million, a little bit beneath the seller's requested reserve, but they were obviously happy enough to take the $7.1 million. That's another thing, right? As we're in the auction, your seller might set a reserve. Say, for instance, they set a reserve at $5 million for their property, right? Yeah, sure. And I'll forward you some of this information, but absolutely. So say you have a seller who set a reserve at $5 million on an asset. We get to auction, right? And say that the bidding comes in and we're at, $3.5 million, $4 million, 4.2, 4.3, right? And it really starts to slow down. And your seller says, you know what, Dennis, you know what? I like $4.3 million. I want that. I want that $4.3 million. Can we lock that in? Absolutely, seller. We have the ability to adjust your reserve within the auction. So if you want to take your reserve down, we can do that, lock in the money. It's still as is, where is, non-contingent, 10% hard EMD. And then we'll allow the bidding to continue to go on the asset until every bidder has had an opportunity to place their highest and best bid, right? And typically what we've seen on our platform is whenever reserve is met and we have engaged buyers, 3 or 4 buyers who are watching the platform, watching that deal, we see an additional 2 to 3 bids that come in across that particular that particular asset, right? So by showing reserve and taking that money beneath the seller's pricing expectations initially could ultimately help them get back to their number, or even above their number, based upon how the deal's tracking in auction. And then just a few more to kind of wrap up. Here's another deal that we sold that was in Huntington Beach, industrial deal. And this was actually an entire city block down in Huntington Beach, traded at $6.1 million, 83% of seller reserve, 16 bids though, that came in across the entire process. And then here, again, value add kind of retail shopping center up in the valley here in Burbank. We do really well on these asset classes. Got almost $2 million for this asset, almost 20% above the seller's pricing expectations. And again, 13 bids that came in. And I have a number of these cases that I can continue to send over, right? This is a value add office asset that we've worked on. This is up north in San Jose. Again, if you're getting opportunities to work with clients outside of the Los Angeles market, 10X will help you service that. We'll get the pictures for you, right? We'll help you with organizing the phase 1 and the property condition assessment, right? We just need you to have a strong relationship and some idea on what's a good deal in that market. And then the last deal that I have teed up today, this one had 9 bids, by the way. The last deal that I have ready for us is it's actually a deal I closed at the end of last year with a client. This is a unique scenario, and I'll close out with this. So on 10X, if you have an asset that you bring onto the platform, and it's a really interesting asset, you get buyers who start reaching out to you, and they don't want to go to the auction and compete. They want to place an offer in and buy the deal before it goes to auction. We allow that to happen on our platform as well. Our process is meant to help your sale, not to kill your sale. So what will happen is on this particular deal, I had a client who set the reserve, wanted to set it at $9 million. We evaluated the property for them initially, and we said, hey, we're probably better setting the reserve between $7.5 and $8 million, right? Obviously, the seller did not want to hear that there was a $1 million difference in our valuation, but they understood because of the data and the comps that we were able to provide. So they said, okay, Julian, we'll set it at $8 million. We set the reserve at $8 million. We took the property out. We started marketing the asset. Within 3 to 4 weeks, we had a buyer who came, step up to buy the asset. They placed an offer, as you can see, at 8.998, just beneath $9 million on the asset. Ended up closing it within 85 days, right? And as you can see, we were 6% above that $8 million reserve that the seller initially set in, a couple, $2,000-$3,000 off of getting them back to their $9 million reserve. So I say all that to say that, again, trust our process. We are experts in auctions, which are a creative strategy for each one of you right now. Your sellers are going to be asking you about it if they haven't already, right? The idea is to know that at the end of the day, you know somebody at 10X who can come in and help them understand and ask questions about what the auction process looks like. If they have a commercial real estate deal, that is what we're going to be useful for. And then ultimately, if there's a buyer who wants to come to purchase the property before the auction, after the auction, or even during the auction, we can be a resource for you in that way, and we don't cost you any additional money. So that's the 10X story in a nutshell. And I'll open it up there for questions, if there aren't. Yes, Tali.
Yeah, I have a question. For the approved buyers and bids, what's the difference? Is it approved buyers already submit the financial status to you?
Great question. So the CAs are individuals who have actually accessed the data room. So remember, on this page here, you got your asset on 10X. This button here lets you into the data room. Everybody who wants to see any due diligence for your asset on 10X has to sign a confidentiality agreement. Now, all of those people who sign a confidentiality agreement and access to due diligence, they might not want to show up at the auction. Maybe they're just looking at the deal. But for those people who do want to show up at the auction, they need to become fully approved to bid. So beyond signing the confidentiality agreement, the next step is to submit to us those verifiable liquid proof of funds. So those approved bidders that you see then, those approved bidders that you see here are buyers that have went through that process to submit those proof of funds, submit their financials to us, and then they have went beyond the confidentiality stage. All right. So we require, again, we require all buyers to be fully approved before they show up at the auction, but they can access the due diligence by signing that confidentiality agreement. And if they do that alone, you will still get their contact information, their email and their phone. Great question.
I have another question.
Sure.
If the property happened to have a phase 2 problem, because you guys start with phase 1, right? And then if they have phase 2 problem, what's going to happen is no way that they could close in 30 days.
Great. So we don't start with a phase or we don't stop with the phase 1, right? We'll start with the phase 1. We'll order it. If there's something that comes up on the phase 1 that suggests we need a phase 2, then we're able to engage the seller and say, hey, listen, obviously this changes things. We need to go ahead and get a phase 2. There's actually 2 options. So the seller might say, hey, you know what? I don't need a phase 2. I just want to sell it as is and discount the price, right? I wanted $3 million for it. This is a phase 1. Just give me $500,000 and I'll sell it regardless, whatever. I'm just giving you an example. So if they want to do that, then that's fine, right? We'll have to look at on our end, we'll have to underwrite it and see based upon whatever comes up in the phase 1, right? Can we still make a market based upon where the seller now wants to reduce the reserve? So that's the first option, reduce the reserve if the seller doesn't want to do the work. The second option is have the seller conduct the phase 2. We will order the phase 2. We will not pay for it on the second one. So 10X will pay for the phase 1. We'll order that up front. If it comes back that the phase 2 is needed, we can help the seller order that. But again, we will not pay for that for them. But once we get that back, that will give us a clear indication of whether we have remediation, whether we have monitoring, right? What is the level of engagement that we need to have beyond just this phase 1 that's identified in the phase 2? And then we're back at the same spot, right? Either the seller needs to say, okay, I can discount the price of the reserve based upon what's suggested in the phase 2, or they're going to say, hey, look, you know, this now materially changes the deal. It's going to take way too long. Let's take it offline, get it fixed and bring it back, right? They might want to take it off and do the monitoring themselves, make sure the levels are in place now, and then bring it back onto the platform. They could choose to go ahead and go through remediation themselves, right? And then sell at the high value. But there has to be some sort of, we've got to figure out, right now we got this phase 2. Are you willing to remediate it, or are you willing to reduce the price to reflect that to the market? Those are the 2 options. Yep. And we'll work with the seller to figure that out. But we will not pay for the phase 2. That would be the responsibility of the seller. Any other questions about 10X, our process? I'm sure Dennis might take a couple co-star questions.
I have a question. So for agents, do they typically go to you when they're about to get a listing? Or do they, because some people have the tendency to think that, oh, when my listing doesn't sell on the market for 100 days, I need to go to the auction and do the auction. So do you typically do listing appointments with the agent or help guide them to go to the seller and show the seller another marketing tool? Because, you know, right now with the market, marketing and showing the property to as many people is the key to what's going to help sell the property.
Absolutely amazing question. Thank you, Ann. Yes. So the short answer to that question, the direct answer to that question is yes. Brokers, our great broker partners, understand leveraging 10X on the front end and as early as you can in the process is the optimum way to leverage our platform, right? And this is me speaking, working with plenty of broker partners and even being a licensed agent and broker myself. If you think about the value that you get from 10X in that process that we went through before, right? We've got that list to close in under 100 days. We're going to give all the free marketing on the front end. We're going to bring all those buyers to you on the front end, and we're not going to divulge pricing to the market at all. So one of the key benefits to leveraging 10X early on in the process is you really get to go out to the market, right? And kind of keep your cards close to the vest in terms of what the seller's thinking, what they want. You get full exposure to the market, right? And then you get all those buyers who are coming to the table and kind of helping you understand, here's how I see the value, here's where I would bid at, and kind of gives you more ammo rather than kind of putting your chips on the table. And what I would say is, when you're going in as a broker to a seller, of course, you're going to be able to tell them, I can sell your property the traditional way. I have my own LoopNet account, right? My broker will allow me to send however many postcards. You have all of that at your regular disposal. But the agents who are winning more listings nowadays, especially when things are tight in the market, it's very competitive, right? Deals are sitting on the market. These are the brokers who are going into those conversations and saying, hey, listen, seller, what I would suggest is, let's utilize the value of 10X on the front end. Let's get the maximum level of marketing, right, in the most professional manner, right, at no cost to you or I, and we don't have to divulge our pricing to the market, especially in these uncertain times. And let's get buyers coming to us, right, and work it that way. And then I'm telling you right now, just based on those conversations that I've been a part of, right, and the way that I've seen, again, Transwestern and Paramount, those two smaller groups, they are competing with Marcus and Millichap on a regular basis. They're competing with NAI. They're competing with the Newmarks. With that thought process in mind, right? Let me be the first one to introduce my client to the idea of 10X. And I'll tell you this, being the first person to mention it is the win, because they might say to you, hey, Ann, you know what? Not right now. Not right now. Let's go ahead. Let's do it for 30 days. I want to go traditional for 30, 60 days. You can say that's fine, right? You market it for 30, 60 days, right? They're starting to feel the pain of the market right now. And then next time they come back and they say, and you know what? You brought something up. What was that thing you were talking about before? What was that auction thing you were saying? Now you say, hey, listen, I've got a guy. He's a great contact. Let's have a conversation with him. Let's do lunch. Let's whatever. And then that's when we get together and we have that conversation early on about, hey, here's 10X. Here's how we can be of value. So yes, Ed, thank you for that. The earlier that you can have a conversation with your seller about 10X, right, and about our value, is only going to put you in a stronger advisory position. And then trust me, in this market right now, they will come back to you and say, hey, look, it's tight. What's going on? What else do you have? And then you can always come back and be an added value.
Any more question? No more question online too. Yeah. Okay. We really appreciate Julian's presentation. That's very informative. And I would like to give an appreciation from on behalf of West St. Gabriel Board.
Please come up. Oh, thank you so much.
And this is the appreciation for you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you all. Thank you. No, thank you so much. Again, if you can't tell, commercial real estate is my passion. Specifically, I love commercial real estate. I love how it transforms communities. I love how it creates wealth. I love how it's connected to every facet, more facets of our lives than we think about, from schools, homes, jobs, etc. And I always appreciate the opportunity to just come out, connect, speak, and be a resource. So I hope you found today's conversation valuable. I will follow up and share some information on the deck and the presentation and some of the case studies that we went over today. But thank you again for your time.